Hey, what's up, guys? So, in this video, you may be wondering what the most competitive week in all of Dauntless Trials history is, to my knowledge. Well, before I get into that, let me just give you guys an idea of what I'll be doing in this video. This will be my first ever video where I essentially tell a story. And in order to fully encompass the facts and the perspective from my point of view, I need to ensure I touch on and, of course, specifically state the accomplishments that I myself was a part of. And I don't necessarily mean to showboat. This is essentially just a part of history in terms of Dauntless. And I'd like to share this to kind of give an idea of what occurred in the past and how things used to play out before the days of Omnicells and Cryptpot. Let us begin. Before my time as a prominent Trials player, there was an OG team that was rising up as essentially the underdog of the entire Trials community. This OG team consisted of Joyride, Riven on my Zed, Stealth Jake, and Sejemsum. These four established their presence on Shrike Week way long ago, when legendary players such as 30, Beta, Dancey Spara, MV, Nemo, Cocky Panther, Forever Napper, Zephyr PvP, Axermain, Devil Dog, Heltrix and Shanks, and many more were still competing to the fullest extent. These four guys I previously mentioned were able to get top 1 placement for Shrike Week in the midst of quite a lot of competition. And this essentially put them on the map for everyone to see. You see, before my Trials journey, I was able to meet Riven back in the day, and we actually worked together to try to get top 5, but to no avail. Riven and I kept contact every once in a while, and when I saw his name on the top 1 board, I decided to reach out to him and congratulate him for such an amazing feat. I didn't want to ask too much of him, and I didn't want to be part of the team at the time, and it actually didn't cross my mind at all when I messaged him. I honestly just wanted to see, how he was doing. Of course, as we continued talking, I started to be tempted to ask, but it never really came out for me in the first place. Riven was actually the one who reached out saying, "You have your top 5, or would you like to join the team?" So I accepted. I fully accepted, and I was excited. When he brought me in, I was able to meet the likes of Joy, Stealth, BLSCOTB, and Sej. And we competed in Skarn Week and was able to get 3rd place, which is actually my first ever top 5 and my first ever top 5 video on my YouTube. But this is all just in order to give context, by the way, to this competitive week. So you guys understand the gravity of how ridiculous this week was. Over the course of time, we kept adding in new members and kept pushing to add people to the main rotation. And we ended up meeting a lot of people that ended up playing with us, one of which was a guy by the name of Mega Alpha Vulcan, who is one of my closer friends in all of online, to be honest. You see, Mega was part of my clan at the time, and he was a leadership member. I knew him to be incredibly competent in the ways of Dauntless, especially with the Strikers. And at the time, Strikers were heavily in the meta. So in the week of Drask Trials, we took him in and shoved him into the main rotation so he could partake in the grind towards top 5 and his title. funnily enough, he was able to attain top 1 in about 20 runs. And he too was able to cement his place within the trial's legacy. Of course, there were other people who also wanted to get their titles on that week, and the likes of BLS EOTB and a guy by the name of Kyber Coyote. Riven, Joy, and I were the main people who posted videos on our YouTube, showcasing the efforts and our accomplishments in terms of trials. And in Riven's video specifically, Kyber Coyote commented within the comment section, "We are the gatekeepers." This did not exactly go well for the legends that we competed against. It was in a way bragging, and it was in a way of showing off. Of course, Kyber had every right to do so, and he was excited and very ecstatic for finally being able to be part of the top dogs. But drama started to occur, and a lot of tension started to rise between pretty much every team. Everyone started to really treat each other in an extremely competitive manner, in a way where next week was going to be the week where everyone's going to go all out, specifically to establish dominance in regards to being one of the best to compete among all these top tier and legendary players. And I won't name specific names on what started this all and how it ended up going the way it did, but the comment section was quite filled with toxicity as well as overall pettiness in a way where, it wasn't exactly necessary, but it helped kind of build up the hype and the overall gravity of the situation in terms of this upcoming competitive week. If you guys would like to see the comment section that I've been emphasizing all this time, I will be linking Riven's Drask video in my description. Make sure to scroll down to the comment section and find Kyber's original comment. From there on out, you'll see a complete tirade of competitive remarks and overall competitive hype in regards to the week that was coming. And it all started with Drask trials, funnily enough. You see, my team knew exactly what was coming next week. We knew that other teams would come in and go all out, considering all the beef, all the toxicity, all the hate, and overall all the trash talk that occurred in the comment section and beyond. And it was going to be an incredibly hard week. However, we downplayed how hard it would be to actually even just place top 10. Every single team on the next week, which took place on a Nasher week, try-harded so much to the point where every day, until the end of rotation, every single team on a top 5 to top 10 spot would cycle out for a new one. Teams would just push each other out all the time, and it was just absolute anarchy and chaos. People were competing to the highest extent, essentially working so hard to try to ensure that they were the top, or at least the top 5. My team, of course, was part of the grind to the fullest extent. We wanted to ensure that we had our place up there. But it was difficult. It was incredibly difficult. Every day we grinded for probably 8+ hours most likely. And every day we ended up coming up short. There were other teams up there, such as 30, Beta, and Napper's team, and they occupied the spots a lot. So the Devil Dog, as well as Ace's team, they were also competing as well. And we didn't exactly understand how this was happening, but we realized why, because every team really wanted to go all out this week. It was absolutely insane. As few days go by, and as we dawn upon the end of the rotation, the last day, my team decided to give it one more shot to see if there was any chance to even get a top 5. And let me give a little bit more context. On the last day, the last few hours of rotation, the top 5 spots were occupied by 30's team. Every single spot was. Gatekeeping to the most extreme, to the point where they even were top 5 on the solo boards. They went all out to ensure that they were the top in every regard, solo trials and group trials. And what made this week different from every other week was that 30's team had a 9-second run. A faster 9-second run than the previous Dauntless group trials world record. Whoever would be placing top 1 by the end of rotation was going to hold the world record for fastest group trials Dauntless run to have ever exist in all of Dauntless. The stakes were incredibly high for this one. And if they were to actually succeed in that regard, they would have the ability to gloat about being the best to ever exist, with no one exactly being able to deny their claim. But my team still wanted to go for it, you see. And we pushed for it. We pushed extremely hard for it. And it was the last few hours of the rotation, like I said. But as we realized how impossible it was, we started to lose faith. We stared at the top spot. It was a 9-second time. And during that era of meta, it seemed impossible. However, the idea of a world record went completely over our heads at the time. We didn't recognize it or acknowledge it. And we were essentially working to even just place on the board in regards to top 5. My team specifically was not thinking of attaining the world record, for it seemed like a far reach for us, considering we were the underdogs. We didn't know what theorycraft strategy was used, and we were confused to the highest extent. We didn't exactly understand what we were supposed to do. And we wanted to do well and support our claims of being one of the better players, as stated by the many trash talk that occurred in the comment section as well as beyond. But as time dwindled, we ended up leaving the game. We ended up turning off our monitors and getting ready to go to sleep. You see, the 4 people who were pushing at that night included me, Sej, Stealth, and Riven. Stealth and Riven didn't care much anymore, for the grind ended up becoming a bit too much, a bit too grindy. So, at the end of it all, they instead went over to play some Final Fantasy as the hours went by. Sej, it was incredibly late for the guy, and he needed some sleep. So we went off to bed to try and get some shut-eye. Well, for me, I just sat on my bed, wondering exactly what the heck did they do to get a 9-second top 1 and to essentially occupy every single position on the group trials board in terms of top 5 placements. And I sat there, wondering how, and just being so relentless and too essentially annoyed and too committed to give up. And the idea came to me. The idea dawned upon me as I realized that there was still something that we have not tried. What I thought about that night, and what Sej actually suggested in the beginning of the week, but nobody listened, ended up shaping the meta for weeks and months to come. The 4 Pangar Tragic Echo meta was something that we didn't try that Nashor week. I realized that, and I connected the dots, considering that I actually did a substantial amount of research and testing in order to understand exactly how the Pangar bomb worked, for it just recently released at the time. Upon this realization, I pushed so hard to pull Riven, Stealth, and Sej back into the grind for one last Hail Mary shot. Of course, I was met with a good amount of mockery from a good amount of people within the server. People didn't exactly understand how the strat could have worked, nor did they do the amount of research in order to see what Pangar Bomb was capable of doing. The strat was an innovative one that definitely changed up the entire era of meta in regards to Trials approaches. And it's interesting, because despite it all, this was the last strat that we could have ever tried. There wasn't another one. Sej, on the other hand, also realized the gravity of this strategy. Sej and I's push for this innovative strat was a shared burden. We both were met with a good amount of distaste in regard to the strategy. But considering the theory crafting knowledge that we both possessed, we pushed for it regardless. Because the push for this strat was initiated by me, as well as supported by Sej, everyone agreed that we should give it one last shot to call it. When Sej and I pushed, it attracted every other member within the server. Of course, the mockery was still there, but the curiosity pushed them to come and witness whether or not the strat really was the one, or that Sej and I were spitting nonsense. Few runs go by, and these were the runs that we were just memeing and essentially met with the most mockery. We weren't really taking them seriously. However, the last few runs were what counted. On the 5th run was when we realized how ridiculous the strategy was. And from then on out, there were no more memes. And the mocking tuned down to absolute zero. And from there on out, it was all up to fate and our skill in the game to see if we could even pull it off. The 10th run was when the world record was broken. We didn't realize that it was top 1 at the time, for we were filled with so much joy and excitement at being able to pull off at least the top 5 in the midst of all this competition. But upon checking the boards, we realized how seemingly impossible our feat was. And we stared upon the board, realizing that we just accomplished the top 1 placement. The week was unreal and cemented this team's legacy as one of the best to ever exist. No one can exactly deny the claim in regards to anyone of these teams and these legendary players being one of the best. But for us to reach the level to be even considered as one of the best teams to ever exist was an accomplishment that reached beyond anything that we ever imagined. If 30 would have won, and if 30 would have stuck his top 1 placement, from many perspectives, there would be no one to deny his team's claim of being the best team in all of Dauntless Trials. However, because of us, everything was equalized, to all of us essentially being able to be considered as one of the best. And no level of undisputed champions ever really surfaced in regards to group trials, all of which revolve around the opinions of people who tend to be more familiar with whatever team they saw as essentially their heroes. Despite this being a personal story, I'd like to treat this in a way where it's my own historical POV of what occurred. Of course, I'm not a historian by any means in terms of actual real-life profession, but I know nobody else has ever done this, nor can anyone else do this or have the experience to be able to tell these stories. And considering I am a prominent player, and despite being retired, I do have the knowledge, as well as the understanding, in order to be able to pull something like this off. So, I'm essentially going to treat this as a ways of cementing staples of Dauntless history, whether it be for just my own personal memories or other people who want to understand exactly what occurred in the past. But that's pretty much it, guys. Sedge and I's endeavor through this terrible burden has given me the perspective that innovation is something that must be pushed for in pretty much every team in order for any one of them to rise beyond the idea of just being good, to become legendary, and to become well-renowned trials players or well-renowned people in regards to real life. And that is the end of the story. The most competitive week in Dauntless Trials history, put in a way where it was perceived by one of the players who held the world record for a long amount of time. Anyways, guys, if you guys enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe. I worked very hard in being able to establish some sort of flow in regards to this story, and it would really help me a lot. Thank you so much, guys, for your continued support, and I truly do hope that every single one of you has an amazing day. Take care, everybody.